Hi everyone, my name is Peri, and I recently got this idea that I want to create a small video about all the mathematics that you would need, or most of the mathematics that you would need in an MBA. There might be a lot of what you already know, but I want to structure it so that you see how it all fits together, how these concepts fits together. So let's do a rapid fire introduction right now. The three the three basic concepts that you need in math are the following. Okay, first, you can only use math on things that you can measure. Okay, like age, height, weight, price of a stock, temperature, etc., etc. So if you can't measure, then math is no good. Examples are love, things like that, where math fails terribly. So if you can measure, then you can use math. Now that you know how to measure, what does math help you do? It lets you make sense of this thing. Like if there are a lot of temperatures that you have from all over the US, you can make a lot of sense out of them. And it also sometimes helps you predict the future, which is a big deal typically. Now, we got the concept straight that if you can measure it, then you can use math. Now that you know how to measure something, which is at the top here, anything that you can measure, there are three branches that deal with what you can do with this thing. First is, let's say you measure something over and over again. Mathematicians typically like to flip coins or throw dice, but being MBA students, let's say you go to a bar and take this dart board and you throw a million darts at it. Million is a big number, but let's say you're pretty energetic that day, and you keep throwing darts again and again and again. And a lot of darts will fall pretty close, assuming you're not very drunk already, and some will go pretty far, right? There'll be a lot of darts around here, and some will go all the way. Some may not even show up on the board. Now, when you have anything like this, this is the center. Let's say you measure the distance and you get this huge book and you put all the numbers in there, like 2 inches, 20 inches, 1 meter, blah, 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 blah. And if you were to take all these measurements, there's a branch of mathematics called distributions or statistics, which helps you make a lot of sense of these numbers. In fact, I can tell you how often will you hit the center, what's with what probability, or probability is a different concept, but I could say that 1 out of 5 shots you'll hit on the green, and 1 out of 16 shots you'll hit on the red, and things like that. I can get very accurate very quickly. So the branch which can help you make sense of this large number of measurements about the same thing is statistics. And there's a very related notion, which is, if a million people, instead of one person throwing million darts, if a million people throw darts, the distribution might be very similar, because people have different skill levels, and you can still use the same branch to make sense out of it. The second branch of mathematics, which is when you have two things, like let's say your age and your dad's age, which are perfectly related. Like let's say your dad is 30 years older than you. Then this branch of mathematics, or this subject that you need to understand, is called functions in the math world, and it will help you understand this relationship. And once you understand it, there's a lot you can do with it. You'll be surprised. We'll go into it in detail. So when the relationship is perfect, okay, it's called beautiful perfect relationships, I call it. Like 1,000 years from now, your dad will still be 20 years older than you. Let's not talk about before you're born and things like that, assuming you're born forever or you've been living forever. So these are relationships, and the best way to look at these relationships is graphs. What I'll do next is we'll go through the most common relationships, and I'll give you like 5 things that you can look at to make sense of this particular relationship. And you'll get a good understanding of it right away. The third one, which is that, let's say it's like, let's say there's this person of your opposite gender, and you feel a connection to that person, okay? Now, this connection that you feel is not static. Some days you feel like the person really understands you. The other days you feel like, gee, I don't know what's going on. So these are what I call as just a connection or not so strong relationships. Unfortunately, these ones, sorry. So unfortunately, we do not have very good tools to make sense of these connections, as I call it. As in, there is something, but it's really not as good as these perfect relationships. The way we try to deal with them is assume that it's a perfect relationship. And that's again statistics. You'll probably learn that in statistics, where we'll try to assume it's a perfect relationship. We'll take the closest perfect relationship. And since we know very well how to deal with these things, functions, and there's a lot of tools to analyze this, and hopefully you'll be proficient in it by the end of this lecture or whatever. Then you'll know how to take these weak relationships and try to make sense of them as strong relationships. One of the mistakes that people make is they take this weak relationship and they forget that they're assuming that it's a strong one. They just think it's a strong one, and that can bite you back, which is what happened to a lot of people in stock market.